Station 51, engine 27, engine 32, truck 105.
You're listening to The Fire Break with Steve Wolf.
Welcome back to The Fire Break. I'm Steve Wolf. The Fire Break is sponsored, as you know, by Team Wildfire, doing some pretty innovative stuff in the fire space. But it's a crowded space. There's a lot of people innovating in this space, and a lot of people working in the insurance business right now who are kind of confused. What's going to happen? Are they losing market, gaining market? Well, okay, nobody's gaining market. We know that. Can they gain back some of what they're losing? How can they help their insureds minimize the likelihood that they're going to have a loss? And I have got with us live from Orinda, California, Rebeca Gomez. Rebeca, thank you so much for joining me today. How are you?
Very good. I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you for taking some time out of your Sunday to join us here. So I know that you've started a company called My Guardian. Can you tell us what the business is and how and why you started it?
Absolutely. So My Guardian, the way I think about it is a loss prevention engine for insurance companies. And the way it works is that we protect their policyholders before a disaster strikes, not after, right? So since we are talking about wildfire today, My Guardian works across major hazards, hurricanes, floods, hail, severe wind, flood, you name it, right? So for instance, if you live in California, you're getting hurricane guidance and tips, right? If you're in the Midwest, you get tornado and hail related recommendations. And if you're in California, it's wildfire. So I've created an engine that adapts to your location, your hazard exposure, and your specific vulnerabilities, depending on your home type, right? One important thing to note is that my focus is in the last mile. So the specific actions that you and only you can take to protect your home and your family. And that's this is something that most people don't realize. It's not just the catastrophic total loss that is breaking the insurance system. It's the way I see it is a death by 1,000 cuts, because there's a lot of smaller claims that pile up that are exhausting for families to navigate and are enormously costly for insurers. So we're changing that by changing people's behavior. And the way we do that is by getting the right guidance to the right person at the right time.
Okay, so how do you do that?
So
and how do you change people's behavior? Because that seems to be...
Yeah, so that is a very good question. And I would lie if I said that I had it all figured out. Behavioral change, as you know, is one of the hardest problems out there. I think that the reason most disaster preparedness efforts fail is not that people don't care, because obviously people care. The way the current, I think that what's happening is the following. So in the current model, you get a brochure, right? With 40 things in it, with tips about things that you should do to prepare for a hazard, right? So, or your insurance, when you sign up, they send you a generic PDF during onboarding. And you look at it, you're confused, you're a little anxious. You're like, oh, this sounds important. I'll put it on my to-do list, but then you put it in a drawer. We've all done that. I'm guilty. And that's not a character flaw. It's just a rational response to being overwhelmed. Like, we are all so busy that we can all agree that this is a very important thing to do, like being prepared for hazards. But the reality is that it's something that we don't experience every day or very often, right? So it goes down in our list of priorities. So when it comes to behavioral change, I'm looking at it from following three principles. So the first one is I want to provide relevant tips, right? So I'm not telling you to prepare for a hurricane when there's a wildfire burning you down. So everything is tied to what is actually happening or what is actually approaching to your specific location on that moment, right? So when the threat is real, and we're all humans, we all do this, the motivation is real. So your motivation when there's a real threat is at our peak. When you are comfortable, when there's no threat around, like you just deprioritize preparing for these things. So the second principle that I'm following is simplicity and sequence. So instead of overwhelming people with 40 things, we say, okay, based on what's happening, given this context, these are the things that we recommend that you do based on your specific situation, based on what we know at this time. So one action at a time, they are ranked by what is the most impactful for you. Because, there's this concept in behavioral science. It's the choice overload. If you give someone too many options, sometimes people freeze. They just do nothing, right? They don't know where to start. So
Right.
My Guardian has an engine that basically does that thinking so that you can do the doing. You don't have to worry about that. And the third one is something that I'm very passionate about, which is we connect the action to the consequence or the positive impact of that action. So we say, instead of saying maintain defensible space, which for some people can be hard to understand, what does that mean? We say, hey, if you have a deck and the deck has openings on the sides, just make sure that you close it so that the embers cannot get underneath and start a fire from there. Or we say you have a propane tank next to your house, just move it away. Or if you have boxes, Amazon boxes in your porch, like move them because those are fuel for fires. So that's basically the way I'm thinking about behavioral change. I'm trying to make it easy for people. I'm trying to lower the barrier so that they can actually take action, so that they are focused on doing what only they can do.
I see. Okay. So tell me about this propane tank. If I have a 20-pound tank for my barbecue, I could move it. If I have a 100-gallon tank that heats my house, it's not so easy to move. Do you suggest people bury it in dirt, or what do you recommend for that?
That's a very specific situation. And I would need to run the software and see what the software says.
Okay.
But yeah, it would follow. So every action that is recommended ties back to reportable sources of, recommendations. So we are not making anything up. We're following best practices. So whatever the best practice is for that situation, my Guardian would take care of it.
I see. And who are your clients in this? Are you working with insurance companies, giving them a resource to give their insureds, or are you working with homeowners directly, or both?
Yeah, so we are working with insurance companies, and they are the vehicle and honestly one of the main beneficiaries of having something like this. But the end customer is the policy holder. Yeah.
Yeah, because it looks like there's many sources of information where a homeowner could go if they want information about how to make their home less vulnerable. So what seems to be like uniquely valuable here is you're bringing behavioral science to it. That it's not about the fact that people don't know what to do, right? It's that they don't do it. So
And so to that, I would add that sometimes people don't know what they don't know. If you used to live in a condo and you move to a single family home, you might not know what you need to do to protect your property in that case,
sure.
because you're not familiar with it. Maybe you are new to California. You don't know how to respond to wildfires. There's many scenarios that kind of seem like edge cases, but they're more frequent than we think. So I think my Guardian is catering to those people.
Are there people moving to California?
Well, I don't know. I haven't looked at the latest statistics. Last I heard, as you know, people are leaving, but hopefully people will come back. It's a great place
We'll
to be.
find out. Right? Well,
Yeah.
a lot of things have to be fixed, I think, before it's going to be an appealing place to come back to.
We'll see. Yes.
Yeah, we'll see what happens with that. So when did you start My Guardian?
I started my Guardian about a year and a half ago, and to be completely honest with you, it didn't start because of a wildfire. It actually it actually was a flood that changed everything for me. So I live in California, and I've lived through wildfire seasons firsthand for many years now. But yeah, this flood that happened made something click in my brain. So as I mentioned, about a year and a half ago, there was a devastating flood in Valencia in Spain. I'm originally from Spain, and this is a developed modern area that is protected from devastating floods. And people died in that event. So I was looking closely at what happened and how they passed away, and it really broke my heart because many of them drowned going to their underground garages to try to save their cars.
Wow.
They didn't know. Yeah, they
Yeah.
went downstairs. They know that this was a death sentence. They just didn't have the information about what was safe versus what wasn't in that moment. So that really hit me because we have all this infrastructure, all this technology. We have insurance policies, right? And people are still dying because nobody educating them into what to do or what not to do when it matters the most for them, right? I've spent many years in my career working on the design of physical infrastructure. I'm a civil engineer by training, so I understand how we protect people through systems and structures, right? And I understand risk. I did a lot of risk analysis to inform these designs. But I realized by looking at this scenario that there's a massive gap in this last mile, the human decisions that no infrastructure can make for you. And that's my hope for my guardian, that it actually closes that gap.
So when you have a goal to educate people, unless those people are showing up in your classroom, how do you reach them? And how do you compete against all of the other things that compete for people's attention?
That
How
is
do
a
you make
great
this brochure or this website, right? How do you get people to go to it? How do you make it sticky so people come back to it?
Yeah, so I am trying to design it so that it's as easy to use as possible. So one of the first things that it does is that it comes to you. You don't have to come to it. So when there's a forecastable event, so you know how we get these warnings, right? When there's a wildfire or there's a severe storm, or even on your weather forecast, they give you warnings. So when those come in, so we are connected to those, and the engine, everything kicks in. And so it comes to you and says, hey, you are at this location. This is what's happening. These are the things that you should do to prepare. So that removes the action of having to, first of all, know what you need to know about, because we tell you, hey, this is important for you. We come to you. We prioritize
Come to
things
us
for you.
physically, like you go to people's houses, or you
No, we have
show up in an email? Or...
no. I haven't figured out how to multiply myself yet. So we have an app. So this is gonna go through the insurance companies to the end consumer, which is the
Okay.
policy via
So I
a
would
mobile.
get an email from my insurance broker directing me to your site. Is that correct?
That would be, yes, that would be the ideal situation. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. And then I go to your site and it wants to know where I live. And I say, I live on this street in this intersection. And then the system is able to customize recommendations for me based on where I am. Is that right?
And based on the hazard that is active on that particular moment, or that is forecasted for the next 1, 2, 3 days ahead.
Okay. So what if I'm like a proactive person and it says, you know what, there's no wildfire danger for the next 2 weeks. We're looking maybe 6 weeks ahead when the snowpack disappears and the winds come in and it's dry. Here are things you could do in advance.
Absolutely. So we
One,
have
will it do that? And two, is there anyone actually looking for that?
yes, to answer your first question, yes, we do that. So we have the Act Now messaging, and we have the seasonal preparation. So based on where you're at and the seasonal risks or preventive actions that you should take, we create a list for you that has to do with the time of the year that we're in, that kind of thing. To answer the second question, what was the second question? Sorry.
So whether people will actually, take the actions. Are there people who are looking to do long-term preparation right now? And where are they going for that information now? And how do you want to move them over to your app to get that information in the future?
Got it. Yes, thank you. So there's a lot of people who are preparing for, are very well prepared for hazards, and they do their own research and they create their own systems. My guardian obviously welcomes these type of people because that's fantastic. Is the type of clientele that any insurance company would want to have, right? Because they are people who are risk aware and they want to do the right thing. They want to protect themselves. They want to be preventive rather than reactive. There's a whole segment of the population that is not that way and that don't know where to start. They don't know what to do. They don't know what's important. They just don't have the information. They don't have the time. Even if they care, they might just not be able to take action because how busy their lives are, So I think my guardian is trying to cater to these people, and the ambition is not to be able to serve everybody, but we want to be able to educate people and make it easy for people to actually know how to respond to these scenarios. Yeah.
And it seems like a lot of people might be in a position where once they know what has to be done, they're probably looking for a contractor to do the work, right? If they might not know how to go to Home Depot or Lowe's and buy the 4x4s and the frames and put them in the ground and put up the fencing around the bottom of the deck. And there's handy people, and then there's a lot of people, just like, give me a name of somebody who can come do this for me.
Exactly. Yeah. So my guardian, obviously there's things you can control, there's things that you cannot control, right? You don't know how handy people are, as you pointed out. We provide how-to guides also that are, videos, or they direct you to the relevant links on the relevant websites so that people can do their own research. But yeah, in a lot of cases, they will need to harden their properties. And in that case, they need contractors to help them out for sure. Absolutely.
So would there be contractors linked from the site, or do they have to go figure that out?
That is something that I haven't figured out yet if it would be even possible, because since this is going through insurance companies, I don't know what their appetite would be to actually advertise some contractors versus others. So if this was my business and I was just, distributing it myself directly, I think it would be a lot easier to actually have something like that and make it even easier for people to find contractors. But I don't know if there's a conflict of interest or if there's any type of liability involved with doing this for the insurance companies. So that's something I haven't figured out yet.
Okay. So how do you prioritize the list of things? Are you listing them in the order in which they make the biggest difference? Or are you listing them in the order in which people are likely to start, giving them the easy thing first so that they, progress and not get too scared off by the first big assignment?
Yeah. So the idea is that it prioritized by what has the greatest impact. So
Okay.
anything that has to do with life safety, it goes first. So for instance, if it detects that it's paramount that you grab your evacuation bag, that would be the first item, right? But then if it prioritizes things based on the consequences of inaction. So
Okay.
if you didn't do something, then it will cost you or the insurance company $5,000, $15,000, $40,000, right? So it gives you an estimate of how much money it would cost to actually replace something, right?
Okay.
So in that way, But as I mentioned, life safety always comes first. It tackles the items that are the biggest ticket items.
And I would imagine that under the trauma of having just lost your house, remembering an inventory of everything you own might be very difficult. Do you suggest that people take their phone camera and video and just walk around the house so they can have, open the cabinets and open the drawers and, open the safe, just so that you have a record in your mind, well, beyond
100%.
in your mind, you have a record, in the cloud of what it is that you own.
100%. I mean, it's free. It takes, I don't want to say 10 minutes, depending on what you own. It might take a little longer. It might take a couple videos instead of just one take, right? But definitely, because before something happens, that's the time you want to have the baseline well documented so that can help you process the claim. It makes it faster. It gives you greater chances of recovering more than if you didn't have documentation of everything that you own. Yeah. Absolutely.
And are you seeing changes in the market between traditional insurance and parametric insurance?
I am not sure about that. Yeah, that's my honest answer.
Okay.
I don't know. Yeah. I
Yeah, it seems
think
that
perhaps if you elaborate a little bit on those two things, I could think of
Sure.
a better answer.
So, disclaimer, I'm not an insurance expert by any means, but my understanding is in conventional insurance, you have a loss, someone comes over, it's a one-on-one process that's very time consuming, requires lots of adjusters, and you have to assess, what was lost, what's it worth, and then negotiate a settlement based on the actual loss. Whereas in parametric insurance, the trigger for the payoff is a parameter that is met, that is objective by sensor. So, let's say in a parametric case, you'd say, if fire crosses this fence onto my property, that is the trigger for the payout, regardless of whether my house was destroyed or only the fence burned. If that event happened, then there's the payout. They're using it in natural disasters, is hurricanes, right? If the hurricane comes within 20 miles of my house, the insurance company gives me whatever, $200,000. And it would be the same amount, whether the roof got blown off my house or just, some dirt got in my yard, or even if nothing happened, just based on the incident happening or not happening. So it's a much simpler, it's very objective whether the incident happened or not. If the city of Boulder is insured with parametric insurance, they'd say, okay, well, if the fire crosses from the mountains and it crosses Broadway, that's the trigger, and we get a payout. So it's very clean, pays very quickly, very objective, doesn't really depend on, sifting how many socks and how many Legos got burned up and whatnot. So we're seeing, kind of a shift to that. And that market seems very receptive to minimizing, the incident from happening, right? Well, okay, you can't stop the hurricane, but with respect to wildfire, if the insurance company knows, hey, if the fire gets within this number of feet of the house, they have to pay, then they're very interested in subsidizing the mitigation work because they don't want that trigger to happen. And the insurance company doesn't have to pull out of a whole market or a zip code or an entire state. It makes it much easier to go on a parcel by parcel level, as you're recommending, and doing that mitigation work. So a parametric insurance company could just say, like, if you remove the wooden fence within 5 feet of your house, remove the shrubs, keep your grass under 4 inches, whatever the rule, spray retardant on the hill behind you. If you do these things, we'll insure you and it'll cost this much. And then they want to make sure that that trigger doesn't happen. So
Absolutely. I
they
mean,
work together.
yeah, what they're doing is reducing the exposure, reducing the risk reducing the probability of something actually impacting the property, right? So the way My Guardian works is in a similar way, but as I mentioned, is this last mile, is the actions that only the person can take. Because here's the thing, there's this weird relationship between the insured and the insurance happening right now. So, and I'll explain what I mean by that.
Yeah, I'm interested.
You buy insurance and you get in touch with the insurance company, and then perhaps you get back in touch with the insurance company when you renew your policy or when you file a claim. But the insurance company, other than yourself, is the most interested party for your house not to be damaged in any way.
Right.
There's 364 days in a year where there's no communication whatsoever. Like the insurance company doesn't know what you're doing in your house. It doesn't know if you are taking protective action or if you're not. Your neighbor might be, but you might not, and they're treating you the same way. So with My Guardian, we want to change that dynamic. So we want to help the insurance company understand who actually takes protective action so that they can understand risk better. Because with this, they're blind right now with this in this scenario. So they can use that to actually incentivize the people who are protective with the property. And, because, that only makes sense. So I think that dynamic is changing. That's the dynamic I know is changing. And I would think that there's going to be a big shift in insurance, in the way insurance works, because there's a lot of people that see this connection, this link, like it's an obvious link. Like they are so interested in you not getting damaged, like health insurance. Like in health insurance, they don't want you to get sick because they have to pay for your medicine, right? With the same happens with this. Car insurance is a little ahead because they know if you're a good driver or not. They know they have your driving history, your accident history. So they can price based on that. But when it comes to property and casualty, they know nothing about you.
It's true. So in that sense, you're really in the content marketing business, right? Knowing that the first time you send a message to a customer, you're not going to really expect much behavioral change. You want this correspondent to come from the insurance company to their client. And the insurance company doesn't have a content creation division to run a drip marketing campaign to people, to help them with their wildfire mitigation risk. So if the insurance company is your client, then you have to provide them with some content that they can send to their insureds on a regular basis, with the ultimate goal that people will do something.
Yep, absolutely. There's a whole change management engine that needs to get activated there, for sure.
And what insurance companies do you plan to work with?
Well, I would love to work with all of them. But I don't have any one in particular in mind. There's a risk data provider that has reached out and we are having conversations, but they haven't authorized me to disclose the name, so sadly I cannot mention it. But yeah, there's interest for sure.
Okay. And so you really have two challenges right now. One, you have to create content that when it's delivered to homeowners elicits some change in behavior, taking some mitigation actions. And then your other marketing campaign is to sell your service to insurance companies so that they'll subscribe and use your service. Is that right? You have to do these two
That is a very, yes, you put it very well. Yes.
Okay. So what are your next challenges with that?
My next challenges, I would say, is proving that it's worth it for them to offer something like this to their customers, because as I mentioned, they are not, as you mentioned also, like they're not in the business of prevention. Insurance companies are amazing at what they are set to do, which is understand the risk, price the risk, and provide a payout when it's necessary, right? But they're not in the business of prevention. They're only now getting into thinking about that. So having conversations with insurance companies, actually getting them to want to talk to me and understanding what we do and how we can serve them and how we can serve the customers. I think that is my next challenge. And I am reaching out to them and I'm hoping to have conversations at least to understand, I want to see what holes we can poke into my approach to things, and so that I can actually massage it and create something that creates the value that is needed.
I see. And so what works against that? Have they basically designed their rates already? So like, hey, if the number of fires happen this year that we're expecting to happen, we're still going to make X amount of money. Right? So you're basically showing them you could make X plus one. You could make a little extra if you have to pay out less.
Yeah. So it's I think one of the way I like to frame it, and I would love to hear feedback about this, is I want to help them prevent death by 1,000 cuts. We all agree that catastrophic events that wipe out entire neighborhoods are not good for business. But there's a lot of events that are happening that are not catastrophic, that are causing a lot of claims that could be prevented. And so that is where my guardian sits really nicely in the big scheme of things, because it can help people understand what to do. And then it helps these insurance companies that have, these claim departments processing claims that are $10,000, and it costs them the same amount of money to process a $10,000 claim than a $100,000 claim, because they have to gather documentation, they have to have different people involved, they have to go back and forth with the homeowner, and it's frustrating for both parties. Anybody who has gone through an insurance claim, what a hassle is. It's just not designed to be a smooth, easy process. And so if we prevent the claim in the first place, well, you get rid of all of this administrative work that wasn't needed in the first place. So that is I think, one of the wins that insurance companies would be able to get if they decided to do something like this.
Yeah, right. Because for every payout, there's a high administrative cost for that. And it's very inefficient, especially with the system of claims adjusters, where someone has to go to the home of everybody who filed a claim. And were they home? And if their home burned down, they're not home, and you can figure out where you're going to meet them. And yeah, there's a lot of hours spent on the administrative side. So if you can eliminate that, super. And I think most people overestimate the value of fire insurance in thinking that, all right, well, I'm not going to do any mitigation work, but if my home burns down, then I'm just going to get a check, and that's that. Not realizing it could take years to get a check. Where do you live in the meantime? Are you going to live in a hotel? Are your kids going to be able to continue on at the same school district? Like a lot of complexities that really are not going to be compensated by getting a check.
Absolutely. It's just, it's better to prevent than having to, to mitigate and repair, in my opinion. I think it pays off.
Yeah. So what type of an investment, time-wise, do you think it will take most homeowners to do the most important part of the mitigation?
So there's things that, as we talked at the beginning of this conversation, there's things where they would need help from a contractor. So that coordination time, scheduling, getting the work done, all of that could take, weeks, depending on what it is. But there's some things that are very simple things that every homeowner could do themselves, that could take 5-10 minutes. And those are the things that I want people to keep on top of mind, and I want to do that job for them. Hey, remember, like this is important. This is really going to help you. You go do that now because X, Y, and Z. So yeah, if we go it would take from anywhere from minutes to weeks, depending on the magnitude of the intervention.
Okay. And is it more effective? I don't know, from a changing people's behavior perspective. Is it better to say, like, tackle this big thing first because it's the most important for risk reduction, or do this really simple thing? Now you start to think about yourself as someone who does mitigation, and it only took you 5 minutes to take your propane tanks inside. But now you've, in your head, I've started the process. Now I think of myself as a mitigator. And then I might be more receptive to additional tasks.
Yeah, I think that when you realize that small actions protect you and protect your family and your property, I think people will be more than happy to actually do them. Nobody's gonna come, to do those things for them.
Right.
So I
What are
think
some
there's
of those things? I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, what are some of those things? If I said, look, I have a busy schedule this week, but I'm going to take 15 minutes to just start something on my mitigation list. What are those easy things to start?
Well, photograph everything, take a video, start taking videos, one room at a time. That could be an easy one that you could do a day during the day. You could do it during the night, inside. You could start creating that 5 foot clearance around your house. You could order, vent meshes. You could start thinking about what fence you want to use to replace that section that is touching your home wall. There's many different things that you can do. But yeah, I think that the number one, as we know, is clear everything that's combustible within the 5 feet of your house. It could be mulch, it could be a stacked firewood, even your kids' plastic playset, wicker patio furniture, anything that is combustible that could, spread the flame quickly, and that is near your house. That's something that you wanna take care of immediately. Vents to prevent embers to getting into the house. Another action that we would recommend is if there's a fire in your vicinity, that you close windows, that you close doors, because the embers could get into the house through those as well, not just through the vents. Take care of your lungs, put on masks if there's smoke. Yeah, there's many things that one can do to protect their houses, their lives, their property. Yeah, and I just want to make that easier for them, as I mentioned.
And if you wait until there's smoke in the air to think about going to the hardware store to get a good mask, they're probably going to be out of stock at that point, right? So these are things you want to prepare
Yeah,
for in advance.
yeah, that's why we give you the seasonal reminders. So we say, hey, for this season, these are the things that you should do. We're starting wildfire season. Go get masks, and always have masks in your house available just in case.
Where do you put it? Next to your bedside? So,
Well, I have them in a drawer downstairs, so they're pretty accessible for everybody.
okay. And what are in your own home, what mitigation activities have you done?
I have done mitigations such as removing some very flammable bushes that were basically connecting the area where the trees are to the house. So it was basically like a highway for flames that would get straight into my house. So we removed that. We cut down some of the tree branches that were touching a deck that we have. Yeah, we've done. Yeah, this house is pretty, I think, well protected, and the fire department did a fantastic job. An inspector came and helped me understand what to do. And I had follow-up questions, and this is before I started thinking about my guardian. So I have obviously nothing but good things to say about the labor that they do. So
And when they do that, so most of the time people go to the fire academy and you learn how to run up and down a building and carry a dummy and, be in a hot room and spray fire. There's not really a lot of education about mitigation. how are fire inspectors learning to do that? And how do they educate themselves so that they can help the community that way?
They So where I live, they have these volunteers, and I think they're with, I don't want to say it wrong. I think they're with Firewise. I'm not completely sure, but I believe they are. And they come, so they send a leaflet, and they say with a little schematic that says, this is the area where you should have no vegetation at all, or this is the area, these are the clearances that you need to maintain. It's a very simple, very straightforward schematic, but obviously there's as many house variations as there's families almost, right? So there's a lot of questions because that schematic is very clear, but how does that apply to my house? Sometimes it's not straightforward. I don't want to miss anything, because what if I'm a very risk averse person? What if I miss the one thing that actually lit my house on fire? So I wanted to make sure that I covered everything, had all my bases covered, and I was able to call them and say, hey, I have these questions, will you answer them? And they were very responsive, and they were very well trained in understanding what these things should be. So I have no other,
No concerns
comments
about
there.
that. That's
Yeah,
great. Rebecca, thank you so much for sharing what you're working on. This is fascinating.
absolutely. My
And I
pleasure.
wish you all the luck with My Guardian, and certainly it's a very well needed service.
Thank you so much, Steve.
Absolutely. My guest today, Rebecca Gomez. My Guardian is her startup, I'll call it.
Yes.
And by anyone who attempts a startup, you have my deepest respect and sympathy. It's a lot of work, but hopefully very satisfying. And I hope that the people who use your service really end up benefiting and not losing the things that they love. Rebecca Gomez, thanks so much for joining me. You've been listening to The Fire Break. I'm Steve Wolf. We're sponsored by Team Wildfire. And if it's not been clear enough through the last 200 episodes, go do some mitigation work. Take care.